Here we go.
We've made it to the end of another year, so it's time to talk about my favorite movies of 2024. As we get into this list, the most important thing to remember is that these are my personal favorites of the year, not the particular best of the year. I don't like using the word best when you're talking about stuff that is subjective. Film is subjective. I might have liked a movie more than you did, and that's totally okay. That's why it's good to have conversations like these to discuss what our favorite movies are. And who doesn't like to talk about stuff that they love? I saw 162 2024 releases, and that was definitely more than I saw last year. I really tried to do a crunch in this last bit of the year, watching as many releases that I wanted to catch up on. Alas, there were some movies that I wanted to watch but I didn't end up getting to, and there was probably like 40 or so. So the list will change over time if you want to keep up to date with how it changes or see where every movie ranks amongst the 162 that I saw. Be sure to follow me on Letterboxd. The link is always in the description. But without any further ado, let's get started with my honorable mentions. Pure O, a movie that I guarantee you probably haven't even heard of. A movie that accurately shows you how messy life can be, not only in our relationships, but also in our own heads. The Substance, a social commentary that absolutely bites. Anora, a movie that I thought was really good. The ending, which has just stuck in my head for the past couple of weeks since I saw it. Arguably my favorite ending of the year. Speak No Evil, which is a movie that genuinely surprised me as to how great it was, with James McAvoy continuing to prove himself as one of the best actors working today. He is astonishingly good. Strange Darling, one of the most unpredictable and twisted movies that I saw this year. Dune Part 2, a technical marvel, very thematically rich. Heretic, a really, really interesting deconstruction of religion and what we choose to believe in our lives. Red Rooms, one of the most deeply disturbing and unsettling movies that I definitely watched this entire year. Smile 2, a movie that completely ups the ante, resulting in an extremely tense and claustrophobic movie-going experience. And finally, Hitman, a movie that is very fun and at times even pretty sexy, with two great leading performances. Coming in at number 10, I'm going to have How to Have Sex. I was pretty shocked by how much this movie affected me. I think give it a couple of years, it's going to be one of the more defining movies of my generation, Gen Z. It tackles specifically our over-reliance on getting these big milestones just done so we can prove something to ourselves or the people around us. There's one scene in the third act that had me glued to the screen, but it's a very nuanced film. It's never in your face. Mia McKenna Bruce gives a terrific performance, very raw and vulnerable. Her ability to convey exactly what she's feeling to the audience just within her face, her eyes, it's remarkable. And the moments of silence in How to Have Sex go a long way. There's so much sadness and anger while watching this movie, but it really stuck with me. At number 9, I have one of two documentaries to make my favorites of the year list, Will and Harper. And to put it simply, this movie is a beautiful reminder of the beauty of friendship and living life as your true self, which is something that I know so many of us need to be reminded. But even on a deeper level, this movie explores what it means to not feel comfortable in your own skin and your eagerness to change how you feel just to be happy. It shows the more heartbreaking aspects of the transgender experience. I got so swept up in it that I was getting emotional multiple times over. And it was great to see a more vulnerable side of Will Ferrell here. He has his funny antics as he's simply just being Will Ferrell. We get to see him learn what it means to be human through his best friend Harper Steele. It's a really beautiful movie. At number 8, I have a movie all about romance and falling in love, Slow. I have a deep, soft spot for movies just about falling in love and the experience of going through it. Slow is a very tender showcase of that. It reminded me of the Before trilogy, where we get to see our two leads just simply going about life and talking and exploring their relationship. There's a tenderness to the relationship on display. It's raw and genuine. It feels like you're watching a couple fall in love on screen. The film also brought a newfound understanding of asexuality to me, which is a concept that was fairly foreign to me. That was an extremely welcome surprise and just beautiful on screen. Probably would have been higher had the final few frames not annoyed me as much as they did, but overall a very well done romantic film. And at number 7, the other documentary that I was alluding to, Superman, the Christopher Reeve story. I have never seen Christopher Reeve's iteration of Superman. I've never seen any of those movies. I plan on eventually watching them, especially soon with Superman coming out next summer. So I was honestly thinking, was I going to be really attached to this movie and seeing Christopher Reeves and his heartbreaking life? And my worries quickly went away within the first couple minutes of the movie. As an audience member, you automatically feel sympathy for him, and the movie does a really good job at showcasing his life and all the ins and outs of it, and you really just feel emotional by the end of it. There are multiple moments where I just found myself crying, as Christopher Reeve just represents the power of resilience. That's always going to be an incredibly valuable thing to take inspiration from, and I think that this movie serves as a reminder to legitimately never give up. Number 6, the movie that I probably thought the most about and then decided to rewatch to see if I liked it even more, and that was the case with Challengers. For whatever reason, I just didn't connect with it on first viewing, and now, having seen it 2 times, I found myself really connecting with it on a follow-up viewing. Beneath the cheesy slow-mo shots and the loud, bombastic score that you just totally vibe with, I did at least, there's this deeply complex love triangle filled with manipulation and betrayal. It's pretty riveting. It's over 2 hours and it doesn't really feel that long. It bounces around different points of these characters' lives, and at first, on first viewing, I didn't like that. I feel like talking about this sounds pretentious, but if you think about it, the bouncing around different times in these characters' lives, it feels like you're playing a game of tennis, and I know many others have said that, kind of just back and forth, and it was really cool to look at it through that lens. Those tennis sequences themselves are great, incredibly well done, and I finally love this movie, and I'm so glad that I rewatched it. At number 5, I have Wicked, which is a movie that I wasn't expecting to love as much as I did. I wasn't expecting to love it because I have no prior attachment to the play, any of the original source material. Like, I've seen The Wizard of Oz, and I think that's a great classic movie. I've never seen a Broadway showing of Wicked, and so I was interested to see what the hype was all about. I know there's so many fans of this story. I would confidently say that now I am a fan of this story, and I can't wait for part 2. The dazzling sets and fantastic musical numbers, you feel immersed into this world within the first couple minutes. John M. Chu does a really good job. The 2 lead performances, I mean, they're stellar and just very impressive. I left the theater with chills from head to toe. Defying Gravity was amazing. At number 4, I have probably one of the more divisive movies of the year, but I loved it. Deadpool and Wolverine. On a repeat viewing, I was curious to see if it would work just as well, having not seen it in the theater with other people. I watched it legitimately by myself, and it's still just as entertaining, funny, and heartfelt. I mean, I obviously have attachment to these characters, so that's probably why I liked it more than some casual viewers. I'm a huge superhero fan, and seeing Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman, their banter between one another was awesome. And I have to say that Jackman is genuinely great in this movie. There's a rawness that you don't really see in comic book movies that I'd say. We obviously saw it in Logan, but he brought a different iteration of the character in Deadpool and Wolverine, and I think that he just continues to do such an excellent job. And there's an emphasis on friendship and persevering through the hardest of times, and obviously there's a theme, I would say, within this list, and just themes for what I tend to gravitate towards in stories, where if they have a really human story at the backbone, I'm gonna find myself more attached to them. So I love Deadpool and Wolverine, and I'm not ashamed to say it. Number 3, one of the movies that inspired me the most as an aspiring filmmaker, The Brutalist. I talked about being curious, having to rewatch a movie, seeing how it would hold up, if I would like it more or less. Talk about the idea of going to see a movie that's 4 hours long, nearly. I was very anxious to do that. I think the longest movie I'd seen up until this point is Zack Snyder's Justice League, and I had never done an experience like this in a theater by any means. A movie with an intermission that tackles decades of a character's life. It's a daunting task to go into it, but I tried to go into it blind, and I clearly loved it. This movie has probably my favorite score of the year. I fell in love with Laszlo, the lead, played by Adrian Brody, who gives one of the finest performances of the year. This is a movie all about the hardships of the immigrant experience, the ups and downs. The runtime just flies by. I was sucked into the story throughout the entire runtime. Besides my minor nitpicks with the epilogue, I'll straight up say, if this movie stuck the landing, it definitely would have been my number 1. I think that it's going to be revisited for years to come, and it's going to be one that inspires you, especially just because of how they didn't have as much material to work with. They didn't have as much money as some of the biggest filmmakers do. It was a fairly modest budget, small even for most other productions. And the fact that it came out being one of the best looking movies of the year and overall one of the best constructed movies of the year, it's incredible. And number 2, I'm a sucker for serial killer murder mysteries, and we have Longlegs. This is a movie in the vein of Seven or Zodiac. They fit into that category that you put on when it's a dark, rainy night and you want to just be sucked in to a thrilling mystery. I found it to be relentlessly gripping and unsettling. Never failed to disturb me. The movie is very twisted. Nicolas Cage is eerie as ever, but the dread built throughout is what really hooked me. The movie rocks my kind of interest in criminal justice and murder mysteries. Like, that part of me, it scratched that part of my brain, I would say. I was hyped for it and it lived up to it. Choosing a number 1 is always very tricky, I would say, for me at least. I know that you have to pick a movie that you feel confident in saying, this is my favorite movie of the year. This is the movie that moved me the most, the movie that I found myself engrossed in the most, the movie that I thought about the most, whatever it may be. And for me, my pick this year went into what movie made me the most emotional. And the movie that made me the most emotional was The Wild Robot. I unfortunately didn't get the chance to review this one, but I started crying halfway through it. It's a heartwarming and beautiful look at motherhood, learning to let go, and finding connection in a world where we so desperately need it sometimes. The animation bursts off the screen. It looked incredible in the theater. There's a truly visceral nature of the movie that it just feels exciting. I haven't watched a movie in a long time that made me feel genuinely excited while watching it, going on an adventure, and one that brings you to the ups and downs of these characters and their journey. It made me the most emotional. I think it was just a right place, right time kind of movie. I know probably most of you too have those movies where you just saw them and they clicked with you due to whatever you were going through in your life. To put it simply, it just felt great to be immersed in a story and just kind of let myself go and get emotional. And sometimes you just need movies like that. And that's why The Wild Robot came in at number 1. It was the movie that affected me the most this year. But that is it for my favorite movies of the year. Be sure to let me know your list down below in the comments. I would love to hear if you have any recommendations for me. Tell me about the movies that you loved. I'm interested to see what all of us thought were our favorites of the year. I want to thank you so much for another great year of YouTube content creation. I can't wait to continue in 2025. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Ben. People call me Meter, and I'll see you guys in the next one.